Robert sat at the kitchen table, his eyes locked on the monitor. The screen was a field of bleeding red numbers. Every refresh brought a new drop. 5% gone, then another. He leaned closer, the harsh glare of the display reflecting in his pupils, highlighting the exhaustion etched into his face. Outside, the morning sun hit the window, casting long, sharp shadows across the floor, but the room remained biting and cold. He shifted his weight, the wooden chair groaning under him, the only sound in the house. This was the third month of steady decline. The silence that filled the kitchen was heavy, thick enough to press against his chest. He reached out, his hand hovering over the desk, then pulled it back and gripped the edge of the table until his knuckles turned pale. The numbers kept ticking down, indifferent to his presence. He had spent years saving every spare dollar, building a foundation for his daughter, and now it was eroding in front of him. Each digit on the screen felt like a physical blow to his gut. He stared, frozen, waiting for a reversal that refused to come. The kitchen door creaked, a soft sound that cut through the silence. Robert did not turn. He kept his gaze fixed on the cascading numbers, his jaw set, his breathing shallow and rhythmic. Footsteps padded across the floorboards. A cup clinked against the wood of the table, the ceramic heat radiating toward his hand. Steam rose in a thin, twisting plume, blurring the sharp red digits on the screen for a fleeting second. A hand settled firmly on his shoulder. The warmth of the touch was immediate, a sharp contrast to the biting chill he felt radiating from the monitor. He looked at the steam, then down at the dark, still liquid in the mug. The weight of her hand remained, steady and unmoving. She did not speak. There was no need for words when the numbers told a story of loss. He shifted his gaze toward the window, watching the morning light move across the linoleum, feeling the crushing pressure of the future he had promised to secure. He reached out and gripped the handle of the mug, drawing the heat into his palm, trying to steady the tremor in his fingers before he looked back at the screen. Robert stared past the screen, seeing the ghosts of past years. He recalled the double shifts at the warehouse, the fluorescent lights burning until dawn, and the quiet pride of depositing those extra hours into his account. He remembered the summers they had skipped, the vacations he had promised but traded for compound interest. Every dollar on the screen represented a piece of his life traded away, a deposit made with sweat and missed milestones. Now, the news ticker beneath the numbers screamed of total collapse. Every expert on the broadcast warned of a systemic end, a global wipeout that made his years of careful stewardship look like a cruel joke. He scrolled through the headlines: recession, bankruptcy, panic. The words flashed in bold, urgent fonts, mocking his discipline. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in as the analysts argued over the speed of the inevitable crash. His heart rate synced with the frantic blinking of the stock alerts. He had built this, brick by brick, and now the foundation was liquefying. The choice was no longer just about math. It was about the years he could never buy back. Robert reached toward the keyboard, his movements deliberate and slow. The plastic keys clicked with a hollow, synthetic sound that seemed far too loud in the quiet kitchen. He gripped the mouse, his knuckles turning white, and dragged the cursor across the glowing monitor. He stopped. His finger hovered inches above the button marked Sell. He watched the indicator pulse, a rhythmic flicker that taunted him with the promise of safety. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic, irregular rhythm that drowned out the hum of the refrigerator. Every instinct screamed for him to click, to end the bleeding, to retreat before the numbers vanished entirely. He felt the cold sweat prickle along his hairline. His breath came in short, jagged bursts, each one catching in his throat. The screen seemed to tilt, the red percentages bleeding into the edges of his vision. He pushed his chair back, the legs scraping harshly against the floor, but his hand stayed anchored to the desk. The mouse felt heavy, like lead. He was balanced on a razor edge, caught between the crushing weight of his fear and the desperate hope that he could still hold the line. The panic hit a crescendo, a roaring static in his ears. But then a single thought anchored him. It was a line from a book he had read years ago, words about the market being a place where wealth transfers from the impatient to the patient. Robert squeezed his eyes shut, blocking out the red numbers and the flashing warnings of collapse. He took a long, jagged breath, forcing the air deep into his lungs until his pulse began to level out. He felt the tension in his shoulders snap, a sudden release of the physical weight he had been carrying for months. His hand trembled, but he pulled it back from the sell button. He moved the cursor with a steady hand, clicking away from the exit. Instead, he navigated to his brokerage account, his movements precise and calm. He typed in the amount for his usual monthly contribution. He paused for one final second, watching the mouse click down on the green button marked Buy. The transaction confirmed instantly. The market was still crashing, but he had stopped running. He pushed the keyboard away, leaned back in his chair, and let out a long, slow exhale. The storm outside had not changed, but the man at the table had. Robert stood up, the chair legs silent against the floor. He left the screen glowing in the empty study and walked toward the kitchen. The house felt different, no longer a cage of numbers but a space of living. His daughter sat at the table, a textbook open, her brow furrowed over a set of equations. Robert sat down beside her, the chair creaking under his weight. He looked at the paper, focusing on the simple, logical progression of addition and subtraction. It was solid. It was predictable. He began to explain the steps, his voice steady and calm. Outside, the news cycle continued its frantic warnings, but he did not listen. He realized the market was merely a machine that moved according to its own chaotic clock, spinning up and down without regard for him. But here, in this room, he held the reins. His habits, his patience, and his presence were the only things he truly commanded. He helped her solve the final problem, watching her face brighten as the answer aligned perfectly. The red numbers on the monitor were a distraction, but this, he understood, was the real work. He leaned back, listening to the quiet rhythm of the house, content in the knowledge that he was the architect of his own internal state. 5 years passed in a blur of steady, unremarkable days. The study had changed, the air now thick with the scent of old paper and the constant, low hum of the desktop tower. Robert sat in his chair, the leather worn smooth from years of use. He reached forward and clicked the mouse, the screen flickering to life with a familiar glow. Outside, the world was loud with news of a new surge, but in the silence of the room, he only cared for the data. He navigated to his portfolio page, his finger tapping a rhythmic beat against the desk. The page loaded, revealing a chart that climbed steadily toward the top right corner. He squinted at the numbers. They had surpassed his most optimistic projections from half a decade ago. He did not jump up or call out to the house. Instead, he leaned back, the chair springs groaning softly. He looked at the total, a figure that once seemed impossible, now realized through nothing more than consistent, monthly discipline. He felt the weight of the past year's shift, the tension of those early losses dissolving into a quiet, profound validation. He picked up his pen and opened his journal, carefully recording the date and the new balance. The numbers were large, but they felt like a natural conclusion to a long, slow process. The door creaked open, breaking the silence of the study. Robert looked up from his journal to see his son standing in the threshold. The boy was taller now, his presence filling the space where his daughter once sat for math lessons. He walked toward the desk, eyes drawn immediately to the glowing monitor, where the chart traced its steep upward trajectory. He leaned over, tracing the line with a finger, before looking at his father with a mix of surprise and confusion. He asked how a man who had once worried over a single percentage point had managed to beat the market so thoroughly. Robert paused. He felt the weight of the last 5 years, the thousands of small, repetitive actions that had built this result. He reached for his pen, capping it with a soft click, and set it down on the wood. He pushed the chair back, the movement slow and deliberate, until he was facing his son directly. The air in the room felt heavy with the necessity of the coming explanation. He gestured toward the desk, where stacks of books sat in neat, weathered piles, and prepared to dismantle the idea of luck. Robert turned his chair completely around, locking eyes with his son. He spoke clearly. "I did not beat the market. I just refused to quit when the market beat me." He watched the boy process the words. He explained that his wealth was not a singular event or a lucky trade. It was the result of showing up every single month. Regardless of whether the news reports were shouting about collapse or growth, he gestured to the window, then back to the desk. "Think of it like a tree," he said. "You do not plant it and expect shade the next morning. You plant it, you water it, and you let time do the work." He leaned forward, pointing to the chart on the screen, tracing the long history of dips and sudden crashes that the line had successfully navigated over the years. The sun looked from the screen to the books, then back to the chart. Robert held his gaze, ensuring the distinction between gambling and steady cultivation took root. The room felt still. There was no secret formula, only the repetitive, boring, and essential act of continuing forward when the environment demanded he stop. Robert pushed himself up from the chair. The wood groaned under his weight as he stretched. His joints popping in the quiet room, he walked toward the desk, reached out, and tilted the monitor so it faced the wall, effectively hiding the chart from view. His son remained by the desk, staring at the empty space where the numbers had been. Robert placed a firm hand on the boy's shoulder, a gesture of finality, before walking toward the study door. "The secret is not the stock," Robert said, his voice echoing slightly in the hallway. "The secret is the discipline to keep moving forward, even when you want to stop." He did not look back to see if his son was still watching. He stepped into the corridor, the floorboards creaking under his steady pace. Through the window at the end of the hall, the afternoon sun cast long, thin shadows across the carpet. He reached for the doorknob, turned it, and stepped into the rest of the house. There were chores to finish, dinner to prepare, and a life to live that existed entirely independent of the market. He walked away from the study, ready to start another ordinary day.